Hi everyone, welcome to our final week of Old School October. This month I've been introducing classic fantasy series to you to help you decide if you want to read them, and some might say I have saved the best for last. Not really, we started with The Lord of the Rings. We peaked early. Today is The Chronicles of Amber. This is a 10-book series that was written in the late 60s through to the early 90s. The series was very ahead of its time, but it was also very limited by its time. It was attempting to do things that had not really been done before, and in some ways it wasn't quite sure how to do that. This series is available for purchase in one big fat volume like this, or in ebook form you get the first 5 books and the second 5 books for the price of 2 books. So it's a really good deal, and a lot of people are thinking, maybe I should try out Amber. Let's see today if this is the right series for you. A man wakes up in hospital with total amnesia. He has no idea how he got there, nor even remember his own name. All he has is a sense of imminent danger.
That's Jason Bourne.
And no, Amber did it first. Many people are hunting this guy. He discovers signs of strange magic. He fights off monsters and finds he has incredible strength. He meets people claiming to be his siblings, and he decides that he's going to pretend and bluff like he's still got his memory. And that's when he starts to learn the truth. He is Corwin, Prince of Amber. Amber is a magical realm. The royal family of Amber have the ability to pass into other dimensions or pass between worlds, even summoning objects to them out of other worlds. These other worlds are known as shadows, where Earth is just one of the shadows, yet only Amber is the true world. It's similar to Asgard, connected to all the other realms through the Bifrost. Amber is the center of the universe. The throne of Amber has recently been made vacant. The great immortal All-Father Oberon has mysteriously disappeared, presumed murdered. Now the 9 princes of Amber are forming alliances in a great war for the throne. He who controls the throne of Amber controls all of the infinite universes. So there are 5 things you need to know about the plots of Amber. Number 1. These are mystery novels. In fact, there is more mystery than there is fantasy. Corwin has literally woken up in the middle of a war brewing for universal supremacy. There are multiple factions with their own plans, secret alliances, and schemes. Corwin has forgotten his own past before he woke up in hospital, so his own life is a mystery to him. So he's very much struggling to catch up. Put it this way, the first book is called The 9 Princes of Amber. So after the 9 princes in the royal family, there are also 4 princesses. That makes 13 of these super immortal beings all vying for control of the throne. And no, it's not The Forsaken, but very similar vibes. Questions of like, who is working with who? Where does everyone's allegiance lie? What are their schemes? What are their ambitions for the throne? Who's just trying to survive? Who has all the morals and who has no scruples whatsoever? Corwin's role in the story is very much like a detective, thrown into the middle of this complex puzzle and trying to deduce enough information to keep up with everyone else. Commentators on the series have compared it to a classic 1950s detective novel, or a black and white crime film, featuring a protagonist who's a classic tough guy with a sharp mind.
I was up for the challenge.
The second thing you need to know. These 10 books are divided into 2 arcs. The first 5 books make up the Corwin arc. The second 5 books are about Corwin's son, Merlin. So literally, you can break this down into Series 1 and Series 2. These books are all relatively short. They're all about 150 to 200 pages long. And this was common at the time when Roger Zelazny was writing it, where you would serialize these stories and post them 1 chapter a week in a magazine. That's how many of these books were originally released, and then were later released in novel form. Yet in many ways, you need to see these books not as 10 smaller books, but 2 big ones. The 5 books essentially form 2 separate 1,000-page novels. So this is more like the Stormlight Archive, and yes, even with 5 parts to it. This is one of the reasons why I say Amber was ahead of its time, because Roger Zelazny was writing the mega fantasy novel before it was cool. So the early books in each of the 2 series will set up a lot of mysteries that don't get resolved in that same book. So these are not self-contained mini-stories. In each case, you will need to read the full 5 books to see the full mystery arc revealed. But this does mean the series has some really big surprises, revelations, plot twists that have all been building up over a period of time, and some of them are particularly satisfying. The third thing you need to know: this series spends most of its time in Amber. This might seem like a strange thing to emphasize, but it is important. When I read this book and realized that, they're a group of people who can travel between parallel universes, well, I thought, great, we're going to see a lot of that sort of stuff. Infinite dimensions. Hell, we'll probably even get montages of dimension hopping, like in Doctor Strange or Castlevania or Rick and Morty.
Let's go, in and out, 20 minutes adventure.
Honestly, no. That almost never happens. This is not a series that focuses on the big fantasy elements of exploring strange new worlds and meeting new peoples and places. This story is about the politics and the war for the crown.
This story's about me, not him.
In many ways, the whole infinite universes thing only exists to add very high stakes to the primary conflict. It's not just a throne, it is a throne above all thrones. That's why the conflict is so serious. The consequences can be literally infinite. So this is why I say it is a mystery series more than a fantasy series, because the fantasy elements often take a backseat and a supportive role to the primary mystery. The fourth thing you need to know: the fight for the throne is not the only threat. So while the throne is the great prize, it is also a great responsibility. The one who sits on the throne is sworn to protect Amber above all else, and in doing so they become the guardian of all the realms. If Amber were to be destroyed, all other universes would fall.
Ooh, that's bad.
So in the midst of all that family strife, there are dark forces that seek to destroy Amber's light for their own destructive purposes. This series has a lot in common with Game of Thrones. While everyone is fighting for the throne in King's Landing in the Seven Kingdoms, dark magical powers are brewing up in the north that pose a much greater threat. Also, Corwin is a lot like Daenerys, who's currently far away and is about to show up and blow up a lot of shit. And on that note, Amber is also like Game of Thrones in that there's a lot of lying and backstabbing and betrayal, but without all the hype of violence, so that might appeal to some of you. The fifth and final thing you need to know about these plots: there are big magical mysteries. So yes, this is a mystery series looking at all the plots in the present, and yeah, there is a mystery about Corwin's past and what happened to him, but there is also a mystery about the ancient past regarding Amber itself. So how did Amber come into being? If the first great king, Oberon, is the father and sire of all his children, where did he get his power? What of the Pattern and the Jewel of Judgment and the Black Road, all of these great and magical artifacts? You see, there is a lot more going on in this world than is clear at first glance. Okay, this is one dysfunctional family. It's like if Malcolm in the Middle had magic.
The boss of me now, and you're not so big.
Almost every character in the first series is a member of the royal household, so they're all siblings, and you might think that they would get along. Yet the lure of the all-powerful throne is too much to overlook. No one can possibly trust each other. There are no brothers and sisters here. Anyone could be willing to lie, cheat, and backstab and murder their way to the ultimate prize. Everyone is just a little dishonest and just a little paranoid.
War had made me very paranoid.
Now, I'm not going to try to introduce all 13 members of the royal family, because honestly, the book tries to do that very early on, and I don't think it works very well. In the first book, Corwin finds a deck of cards that has all the names and faces of his siblings, and there's a long info dump of descriptions of describing each and every member. It's very difficult to remember who is who. at first. That said, there is legitimate good character work in this series. All of the siblings have unique personalities and moral leanings and opinions on the throne and different levels of ambition. They even talk different to each other. So eventually it gets easier to keep track of them. But I suspect for some readers, these characters will always kind of blur into each other. But that's just for Series 1. Let's go look at Series 2. I read the 5 books in Series 2 just this month in preparation for today's video. Up until recently, I had been putting off reading the next 5 because I'd heard so much criticism of it that they were nowhere near as good as the first 5. People said the Merlin arc is nowhere near as good as the Corwin arc. Yet in many ways, I liked Merlin's arc more. So why do so many people like it less? Because it's so different to the first one. So I'm just going to highlight a few differences before I actually talk about the story. So Merlin is a young sorcerer living on the Shadow Earth. Where his father is ancient and wise, Corwin is young and inexperienced. Where Corwin is a warrior and a master swordsman, Merlin massively prefers his magic. And where Corwin is sometimes an anti-hero traveling through all the cosmos, Merlin is almost a pure hero, and he spends a lot more time on Earth, or in the courts of powerful houses. And most importantly, Corwin is a pure Amberite, where Merlin has mixed heritage between Amber and the courts of chaos. Now, I am going to have to include some spoilers here for Series 1 in order to pitch Series 2, but I'll keep them as light as possible. You can actually tell from the titles of the series that the word chaos shows up a lot. It's because we learn through the course of the series that Amber is the world of light and order, but it has an opposite, chaos, the realm of darkness. And Merlin is a child of both worlds.
Who had sex with what and gave birth to which?
So Merlin lives a quiet life on this Shadow Earth. He's hiding his magical heritage. He's studying computer science at a university, and he competes in sports in his spare time. He has a best friend called Luke and a girlfriend called Julia. Life is good. Except, every April 30th, something spontaneously goes wrong and almost kills him. It's too perfect to be a coincidence. Some malevolent force is trying to kill him on the same day every year. So this year, Merlin is determined to catch them in the act. And so begins a new mystery and a new threat focused around this young sorcerer. Where does the threat come from? From Amber or from chaos?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Merlin has to walk a narrow tightrope as he makes friends and, unfortunately, enemies in both Amber and the courts of chaos. Will he have to eventually choose sides? And why is so much riding on his own personal choices? So the strengths of Series 2 is that there's not a huge number of characters dumped on page 1. There are probably more characters in the second era, but it's so much easier to keep track of them because they're introduced 1 or 2 at a time. There's also greater diversity within the characters. So in Series 1, all of the characters are part of the Amber royal family, with only a few exceptions on the side. Where in Series 2, some characters are from Amber, some are from Chaos, some are from Earth, and some are from other shadow worlds. So it's much more interesting because they all have a different backstory. The mystery plotline is significantly stronger in Series 2. So in the Corwin arc, a lot of weird, mysterious stuff happens early in the books, and it feels random, like the writer did whatever was going to make the first couple books more thrilling, and then it feels like in the later books he tried to retcon it and add meaning and consistency to it. It feels a little bit forced sometimes. Like, yeah, I guess that's an explanation, but there are major cliffhangers in Series 1 that are just dismissed later on because it didn't really fit the direction of the series. Like, one character swears murder and vengeance, and then later on in the series they're like, I didn't really mean it.
Oh no! Anyway...
But in the Merlin arc, it's very clear that Roger Zelazny knew that he was going to write another 5-book series, so there's a bit better planning. The plot twists have much better foreshadowing, and the mystery plot feels a lot more cohesive most of the time. It's not perfect, but it's better. There's also character arcs in Series 2. So in Series 1, it spends so much time just trying to distinguish all of its characters that it doesn't really have time for arcs. Only Corwin really has an arc. Where in Series 2, Arcs are much more common, and they're very well done. Several characters grow and change in interesting ways, and they feel very natural. The character Luke in particular gets a very nuanced arc. So while Series 2 is different, it's not just doing what's been done before. It's a new story and goes in an interesting direction for the series. I think people were disappointed that it wasn't more of the same. So I've been almost reluctant to talk about the world building so far. After all, the book literally starts with the guy waking up in hospital with amnesia. So much of the point of the story is discovering the world building, learning about Amber and Chaos and the royal family and all the great magical mysteries. It's a big driving point for the series. So I'm not going to go on about it too much here. I want to try and keep as much as possible a mystery for you. But I have to acknowledge that this area is Roger Zelazny's greatest contribution to the fantasy genre. This universe has truly infinite possibilities. As I said, we don't spend a lot of time exploring the different worlds, but we do spend some time. Many of these universes are actually referential of other works of classic fiction. So Book 2 is called The Guns of Avalon. Avalon is famously an island in King Arthurian legend. So this book has a lot to do with King Arthur, Camelot, Knights of the Round Table.
We're Knights of the Round Table, we dance where we're able.
Other books have scenes out of Alice in Wonderland, and there's a huge amount of quotes and references to Shakespearean works. It's very clever and it's almost highbrow fantasy.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Amber also has only a little variation between its universes, so each world is a reflection, and there's only slight differences. I think later fantasy and sci-fi works have a lot more extreme variety between the universes. It's almost ludicrous now. But I think even universes like the Cosmere still have the Amber blueprint at its foundation, the idea of multiple worlds all sharing a common link. Sometimes we call these multiple worlds universes or planets or dimensions, but the point is they are different places. And the bridge that links these places can take many different forms. It's why it's such an excellent type of setting for a big cosmic story. That said, I do have to critique just two things about this series. So I personally experienced boredom a couple of times while going through this series. I put the series down multiple times to go and read something else. Now, I don't know if you will find it boring, but I'm going to list the things that I found less exciting to give you a bit of an idea. So for one, the language in prose is a bit much. There are long sentences of overly flowery description, and the writing just tends to go on and on instead of just getting to the point. I would love to read an abridged version of Amber. Secondly, the story spends a lot of time setting up sci-fi concepts that modern audiences are already familiar with. This is very common for the era of the 60s and 70s. If you've ever watched the original Star Trek series with Kirk and Spock, you know that they spend so much time over-explaining things because it was all new to the people at the time. There are several time travel episodes in the original Star Trek where it takes them so long to realize that it's time travel. Modern audiences are way more accepting.
You see, magic. Got it.
So Amber spends a lot of time explaining multiple worlds and other magic stuff that may have been required at the time, but is a little dull now. Third, it spends so much time thinking about the mystery. So we often get long scenes or even whole chapters where the character just sits down and thinks about everything that's happened so far. They point out all the plots and the clues that have happened, and obviously they are trying to figure it out, and the writer is reminding the audience of what has happened before. But sometimes you just want to skip to the next scene.
Get on with it!
The writing advice these days is trust your audience. You don't need to remind them of everything to keep them engaged. Just go to the next scene. Fourth boring part, there's a whole bunch of just weird magic shit. I'm honestly not sure how else to describe it. There are sequences where weird magic stuff is going on, but we don't actually know what's happening exactly. It's just a whole lot of vague, over-the-top writing. Like, I pushed out my will, and I felt the power, and shadows were slipping around me, and there was wind and earthquakes. And I'm reading it being like, what's happening?
What's going on?
So keep in mind, many of these boring bits are actually more a reflection of the time when Amber was written. Remember, I still say Amber was ahead of its time, but also limited by its time. No one had done a story quite like this at the time, so it was very experimental. And often if you experiment, you won't get it perfect straight away. So yeah, Amber was a product of the 60s through to the 80s when it was written, and it's never been any clearer than in this next section. So women play a really weird role in the Amber series. It's not always great. It's also not always bad. It's a very nuanced situation. Let's look at it. So in the first 5 books, the Corwin arc, there hardly are any women. You might have guessed by the fact that there are 9 princes and only 4 princesses. The main women of the royal family have such a small role in the story. For example, there's a scene where 2 brothers are sitting down and discussing everyone's plan for the throne, and they talk for page after page about what each of the brothers want. But when they get to the women, there's only a single line dismissing them as not real contenders for the throne, sort of a, oh, they're not really interested in ruling comment. And that's it. There are several other women as side characters outside of the family, and they're a little bit more involved and active in the story, yet they're problematic. I mean, spoilers, but either they immediately have sex with the main character, or they die. Or both.
Well, it doesn't sound awesome.
But this is where it gets interesting. In Series 2, the Merlin arc, it has almost a total turnaround on this point. There are gradually more and more women, not right away, but gradually, to the point where the story ends up being just about 50-50 male and female characters. And the women are real people too, with actual personalities and desires and even schemes. They're not sexualized or there to just die tragically. Some of the women in Series 2 became some of my favorite characters in the whole series. Hey, there's even a gender-swapping character. So this is a fascinating change to me, and one I love seeing, because Roger clearly decided he wanted to do better in this area. I'm not going to speculate on his personal beliefs, I don't think that's the right thing to do, but it seems to suggest that Roger changed his beliefs on this issue and learned a lesson. And that's something I would love to see normalized, that we can change our beliefs and try to do better and learn from mistakes. So how has Amber affected modern fantasy? Well, I think the most obvious one is that multiple dimensions are now a common trope of sci-fi and fantasy. The concept did come from multiple places, like Star Trek in the 60s, The Dark Tower in the 80s, I'd even say The Matrix and The Wheel of Time count in the 90s. So Amber was one of many who contributed to its popularity today. But I'd say a larger contribution is the mystery plotlines. Amber blends detective novel with a fantasy setting, and it's the series' greatest strength. Nowadays, you almost expect a fantasy novel to have a mystery element. From the Cosmere to Fourth Wing, there's always another secret. It's also just so refreshing to see a classic fantasy series set outside of medieval Europe. Amber goes beyond the classic Lord of the Rings setting, and even has elements of sci-fi blended into it. We can see that in the works of Mark Lawrence and the Poppy War, for example, going outside of Europe and including sci-fi elements. Finally, I think the story structure itself is a big influence. Roger took the usual serialized short story novel and turned it into the long-form mega novel doorstopper that we know and love today. He wrote the doorstopper before its time. Additionally, author Neil Gaiman said Zelazny influenced him more than any other author did. And author Andrzej Sapkowski, the author of The Witcher, he considered Zelazny to be his spiritual teacher in the craft of writing. So Zelazny may not be a household name like Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson, but I think it's safe to say that his series has had a much bigger influence on modern fantasy than we may realize. So here's a sad fact.
Bad news, everyone!
The Corwin Cycle and the Merlin Cycle are all finished, and the 10 books do have an ending, but Zelazny was clearly planning to write more. There are several great mysteries hinted at in the final novel, with a very clear promise to explore them in the future. Unfortunately, Roger Zelazny died rather unexpectedly at the age of 56 from kidney failure caused by cancer. And I think it's very likely that he was planning to write more or less a third Cycle in the Amber series. However, he did state quite clearly that he didn't want anyone else writing Amber novels. Except the Zelazny estate immediately hired another author to go and write more Amber novels.
In bird culture, this is considered a dick move.
So John Betancourt started the Dawn of Amber series, a prequel cycle of 5 novels focused around Oberon, the original king. However, this series was pretty widely criticized and called fan fiction, claiming that it changed a lot of established Amber lore, and was even publicly criticized by authors Neil Gaiman and George R.R. Martin. Authors speaking out against other authors' works happens so rarely, you kind of sense how bad it had to have been. Then, coincidentally, the publishing house that was releasing the Dawn of Amber series went bankrupt after 4 books, and the 5th book was cancelled. Do I smell a conspiracy theory? So I didn't know all of this going into Amber, so the ending left me feeling very melancholy about unfinished books, and mysteries we'll never see resolved. But speaking of that... Look, I still think the ending is worth it. Both the Corwin arc and the Merlin arc really reward the reader for sticking through all 5 books by giving plenty of big world-shattering events and plot twists. As for the whole mysteries left open, I actually think this is thematically consistent with the Amber series, that not every mystery is solved. That's very Amber. In this big world that is chock full of the unknown, I kind of like that it stays mysterious. So I think you can just try the first novel, 9 Princes of Amber. It is a strong novel, it has all of the best mystery, and the most epic of fantasy sequences. Now look, I know I say that the series is really 2 big novels, but I can't justify telling you to read all 1,000 pages of the first series so you get the full picture of the mystery arc, and you can really tell if it's right for you. No, you can just read book 1 to test it out, but keep in mind that the greater mystery plot lines are explored deeper into the series. So good luck, my friends, and happy reading. Okay, so that was my introduction to the Chronicles of Amber. Thank you for your patience with this late video, and I hope you now know if this series is going to be right for you. And if that didn't quite excite you, check out some of the other videos on my channel and find one that does. Let's get excited about reading and celebrate that books truly are for everyone. I'm sure there's a perfect book out there for you. We can also celebrate now. We have officially finished our theme of Old School October with just a few hours to spare, I think. Next week, I'm starting our new monthly theme of Indie November, introducing some self-published authors who deserve a little bit more spotlight and attention for their excellent writing. Also, if you haven't heard the news that I shared last week, I'm participating this month in NaNoWriMo, the challenge of writing a novel in November, because I'm planning to self-publish my very first book next year. And I'm telling you all this way too early, not to hype you all up, but more so I have a bit of accountability so I actually follow through and get it done. Lots of good things happening around here. So remember to do the YouTube stuff to support the channel. You can also check out our shop, links in the description, and I will see you next week to talk about Scottish indie author Michael R. Miller and this beautiful book, the Dragon's Blade trilogy, which is just a whole lot of fun. Really enjoyed it, and I'm just showing off how gorgeous is this cover. It's amazing. So that's coming up later. Meanwhile, I hope you make time for a good book today, and I hope you make time to be nice to yourself. Bye, everyone.